Welcome back. Thank you for joining our last panel, Deepfakes and Vibe Hacking, the Next Frontier of Social Engineering, moderated by Lucian Constantin. Please, Lucian.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon again. Sorry for that. I'm not sure if you heard me. Welcome everyone to a very important discussion on how AI-assisted content generation and attack chain automation are fundamentally changing the threat landscape for consumers, businesses, and governments alike. My name is Lucian Constantin. I'm a senior writer for CSOonline.com. I have covered the cybersecurity field as a journalist for over 15 years, so I have seen financially motivated cybercrime as well as state-sponsored attacks evolve over time. I truly believe that with AI, we are entering a new age of social engineering that's characterized by unprecedented levels of automation, scale, speed, but also extreme personalization in terms of targeting and hyper-realistic impersonations that manipulate human psychology. Joining us today to discuss how deepfakes and vibe hacking challenge our existing technical and human defenses, and hopefully what we can do about it, is a diverse panel of experts who bring unique perspectives from their fields in different sectors. We have academia, we have media, we have government, we have technology, and as well as banking and finance. Please welcome Loredana Vladu, Associate Professor and Director of the Department of Communication at the National University of Political Studies and Public Administration, known as FCRP-SNSPA for the Romanians in the room. Mihai Rotariu, he is the Communications Manager at the National Cybersecurity Directorate, DNSC, which runs the Romanian government's Cybersecurity and Incident Response Team, formerly known as CERTRO. Dragos Stanca, a tech entrepreneur, a technology ethicist, media expert, and founder of the Upgrade 100 content and events platform. And George Proorocu, IT Operations Manager, Cybersecurity and Fraud at ING Bank. Deepfake fraud incidents have skyrocketed 3,000% since 2022, according to some estimates. According to Resemble AI, which a company that develops deepfake detection technology and puts out a quarterly report, they tracked over 2,000 verified incidents in the third quarter. That represented a growth of over 50% over the previous quarter. So we're still seeing explosive growth in this area, and they noted not just quantitative growth, but qualitative evolution in the attack sophistication across multiple target groups and types of content: celebrity impersonation, corporate business CEO, CFO impersonation, financial fraud, geopolitical election influence campaigns, as well as non-consensual generation of non-consensual intimate content. I want to frame a little bit vibe hacking, because vibe hacking, in a stricter definition, means the AI-assisted malicious content, malicious code generation. So we're talking payloads, malware payloads, exploits, vulnerability research, but in a larger context, it's also used with the meaning of automating the entire kill chain, including the social engineering vectors that focus on psychological manipulation. In the context of social engineering, AI models can analyze the publicly available data about a target to determine the right tone, whether it's empathetic, formal, or urgent, to craft a message that feels authentic to that particular victim. I'd like to offer the speakers the opportunity to each share their thoughts on this topic before we go more deeply into specific examples in various categories of how deepfakes are used, and as well as vibe hacking. We'll start with Loredana.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. It's I think it is very useful to have in the same room technology experts, communication experts, also experts that are strongly linked to the psychological area of digital disinformation, let's call it like this generally, but of course that we can speak about far more than that. And I have here a cheat sheet because there are so many information, there is so much data in research, not only academic research, that tells us about the impact, the outcomes of AI-driven disinformation, including, of course, deepfakes and vibe hacking. And basically, I have here 5 points that I will mention very, very quickly. First of all, we need to be aware of the fact that AI-driven disinformation takes advantage of some human weaknesses, let's call them cognitive biases, that are part of our very nature. So it's not something strange or odd in this story. First of all, there are these mental shortcuts. We like mental shortcuts because we have this sense and this belief that these mental shortcuts make us more effective, more rapid, but this usually happens at the expense of taking some risks, be them cybersecurity risks or social engineering risks. Then emotions and the way these emotions are being used, weaponized in the digital environment, make us more vulnerable. And as you know, the AI-generated messages usually use fear, anger, these emotions that increase potentially, exponentially, the virality of an information. And the third one, I think is particularly dangerous and relevant in the framework of our discussion about deepfakes and vibe hacking. We naturally trust things that look and sound very real. And this is what the deepfakes are doing, actually. Then, of course, there is this information fatigue, the fact that we are basically overwhelmed with waves of information, and this makes our job of finding linkages and verifying information, fact-checking extremely difficult. And nevertheless, I know that it might not sound very, very nice, but I will try to put it bluntly. Humans tend to follow the crowd. And this also applies in the digital field, and the algorithms are designed in this way in order to give us the idea that we are part of a very coherent and consistent story, and that of course, if we are there, then that is the best place where we should be, even though that place is a lie. Thank you.
Mihai.
Hello, my name is Mihai Rotariu, and I'm from the National Cybersecurity Directorate. I think that deepfakes are one of the biggest threats to our society, because they do not activate only in cybersecurity. We are not talking only about frauds, so we are talking about creating mistrust in our society, and we saw that including in the elections. The technology evolves in a rapid manner, so perpetrators, cyber criminals are using the technology, unfortunately, much more efficiently than we as users are able to use technology to defend ourselves. It is indeed the AI enabled a lot of normal people, not hackers with special skills or abilities, to get into this business of fraud. So we see a lot of people that effectively use the technology and are making a lot of money without having any skills to do that. So they use, as my colleague said, they manipulate emotions. They use social engineering. So they are people that know how to influence ourselves to do a certain action that would be malicious for ourselves, for our data, for our I don't know, computers and stuff like that. I remember that around 2023, in August, if I remember correctly, there was a wave on social media of deepfakes with important people in Romania, usually journalists, political people, businessmen that promoted some sort of investment scams. There were a lot of such ads that were propagated on Meta, basically on Meta platforms, that were pushed through compromised accounts. So we were trying to fight this trend, but it was very hard for us as an authority to get in touch with the social media part of things and trying to get down all those videos. So it is very much more important to prevent and to provide the right recommendations to the users on how to act when they see such a content than trying to get our money back after we've provided data for the fraudsters or we made a payment. This is why we have not only to look at the technical side of a deepfake video. We have also to think about critical thinking, to be patient, to make more documentation, more verification, and we have to build ourselves a cybersecurity routine when we encounter such content.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is George Proorocu. I'm a part of ING Bank from Fraud and Cybersecurity, managing the IT operations. And yeah, I think if we're talking about deepfakes, they create kind of an issue for our society because it's quite hard to make the distinction between what is real and what is not, and it kind of affects also the trust that we have between us. And when you're seeing a video, for example, you need to think twice if, okay, this might be a deepfake or not. And as we showed also in our presentation yesterday, technology advances very fast. And if we look only in the past 3 years, like from 2022 to today, it's the quality of deepfakes and how easy it is to generate them really increased very fast. So basically, anyone can generate deepfakes in a fast way and without having a lot of technical skills. And when we're talking about scams, we also see a bit of a parallel of what is happening in the US. Step by step comes also in the other countries. And you mentioned this with the investment scams, because this started a little bit in the US, where Elon Musk was promoting different investment scams. Of course, the scammers were using deepfake for that, and then we saw this being propagated in all the countries. And I also saw those videos in Romania that were very popular, and many people lost a lot of money in them. And what we see is also that there are a bit different categories of deepfakes. So there are scammers that are using them a little bit on mass market, like on this kind of easy to generate deepfakes of a famous person, and then they are promoting an investment scam that is nowadays very easy to either generate it yourself using different platforms, or you already buy a platform, you just put it online, and then you have kind of your key solution as a scammer, and you can already start making money, and you just promote a video and then wait for the victims to come. And another quite popular in the past years scam is involving audio deepfakes. And this is something that many people don't know, and we were talking earlier here with the panel members. Basically in the US, how it works, it's an accident scam 2.0 redesigned. So basically imagine that the scammers will call your parents with your voice, and they're going to put them in a panic mode. Something like, mother, I just hit someone quickly. I've sent you a Revolut link. Please fast, just send 200 euros or 500 or 1,000, whatever, not a very huge amount, so that they know that they will get that. And basically, in the US, they're doing this in a bit of an automated way. They are fetching from social media the relationship between family members, then matching the social media account with a phone number, then calling even in automated mode, building an audio deepfake model, and then the scammer basically initiates the call to the parent with the generated link, and then they have a quite high success rate, unfortunately. And we didn't hear about this in Romania because we were talking a little bit here, but probably it's going to come also in other languages, not only in English. And we see technology advancing very fast. Like when we're talking about audio deepfakes, the quality is incredible. Like we can generate very good accents. We can switch between male, female, for example, and we showed yesterday an example on that. And it's very easy to use as well and to integrate even in a live call. So unfortunately, it's a bit scary what we have today, and probably in the next year it will become even more science fiction, I would say. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dragos Stanca. I spent the first part of my life losing money as a journalist, then the second part of my life making some money as a media manager, and I started my entrepreneurial career. Successfully sold 2 companies, one of them in programmatic advertising, and I think it's a very important part of our discussion. I've also worked for Meta, and the last part of my life I intend to lose money again, being a media ethicist, and we founded an NGO called Ethical Media Alliance, trying to solve or to start to solve some of those problems. What I do believe strongly is the fact that in Romania especially, but in the eastern space mostly, we have a new wave of more subtle attacks that are based on exploiting the ad tech ecosystem vulnerabilities, and we can detail more. And let's address the elephant in the room. The main problem is that everybody in the world, we are striving for power and money, and power, depends on what we like more. And the current setup of the whole digital market is made to encourage the bad actors. This is the main problem. Yesterday or the day before, we saw one first very important piece of journalistic discovery, that 10% out of the Meta's revenues are provided by scammers or bad actors. So when you have 10% out of your revenue in your company, and everybody is yelling at you that you should do something, and so, of course, PR-wise, you are saying, we are taking all the measures in the world possible, but in reality, you are going back to the office and say, okay, let's see, maybe we can prioritize metaverse or something else. So as far as we as society, and as far as we as a business ecosystem, we encourage the bad actors, we provide them more and more sophisticated tools, we are talking in vain, and others are making the money and the profit. So, long story short, we need to address the elephant in the room. There is a business model that is encouraging bad actors in the digital space. Bad actors that are only looking for making some money, or bad actors that are looking to turn democracies into something else, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, I'm an AI optimist. So I think we cannot fight this bad tech. Only with good tech we can do that. Web 2.0 is made based on a single rule. Reach as many people as possible with the lowest cost for technology and for investment in advertising as possible. So the lowest cost for the biggest reach. The truth is optional and is not profitable. The truth is, on contrary, is an issue if you're creating good content, educational content, and so on and so forth. If you're creating fake viral videos, or you can, if I'm right now, if I'm entering my Facebook or TikTok or whatever, I'm saying, oh, I'm at the DefCamp talking about cybersecurity, boring. Nobody will like it, maybe some friends will like it just to encourage myself. But if I will say something like I had a fight with you, or a controversy with Mr. Rotariu, everybody will pay attention. So if I will lie in social media today, I will be very successful under the current standards. So, long story short, I think because Web 2.0 is encouraging everybody to consume content like hell and to produce shitty content to be successful, the new model, hopefully AI-driven, I'm more optimistic to see more focus on the right answers. If it's more CPU power consumed to bullshit users with long answers or whatever, is not bad for, is bad for companies. And I really hope that AI will be an efficient fact checker, because AI as a business model needs real data. It's not based on fiction. It's based on facts. So I'm optimistic from this point of view, even if, of course, now we see bad actors using also AI and deepfakes and so on and so forth. I do believe, or I hope, that with the good people around like yourselves, we will find a solution using AI.
Thank you. I have some follow-ups before we get to the propagation channels, which one of them is the advertising space or advertising on social media, and what needs to be done there, whether it's regulation, whether it's education. But yeah, one thing that changes. It's not necessarily that these are new scams, but there are enhanced scams that kind of bypass our existing defenses, whether that's like human-based, human verification checks, or employee training in the corporate space that were training employees to detect phishing attacks and validate, do out-of-band verification. And the scale, the reduced cost that attackers need to put in order to launch these campaigns. And as was mentioned, the skill level required to launch these attacks is dropping because of AI, because AI is pulling in the most amount of work, is doing most amount of work, and the attacker doesn't need to be as skilled or invest as much money and time, because time is money, to generate, to do the reconnaissance, investigate their targets, write specific messages for each specific target. This is now done in seconds, whereas in the past it required days and hours, open source OSINT and things like that attackers would have to do. This is done much faster, and the question becomes, how can we how can we respond to that? Are our controls enough, or do we need to change them? For example, there was a case earlier this year where the employee of a UK engineering firm based in Hong Kong was tricked to pay out $25 million, the equivalent of $25 million, to fraudsters. And it all started with a phishing email, or phishing message that he received. And initially, he actually thought that it might be phishing. And he got invited to a video call. And on the video call, on that conference call, he saw multiple of his colleagues, including one of the executives. And they were all deepfakes, real-time deepfakes. And his guard dropped. Because those are people he knew and interacted with, and then he transferred the money. So in this case, you had an employee who had the training to ask questions and understand that it's potentially a phishing but then the attack bypassed that. As a counterexample, there's the Ferrari example, where an executive was almost scammed, but not really, by a message, a WhatsApp message that he received from the Ferrari CEO, and urging him to similarly do something. It was from a fake number, and the way he verified it was to ask a very personal question, which was a book recommendation. So using a piece of information that only him and the other person involved should have known, is not easy to discover. In that way, he realized that it's actually a scammer, even though they were using the voice of the actual CEO, right? So that's what are some of your thoughts on that? We know, like you mentioned, the accident scam, right? Would something like this, it would be the recommendation to set up some sort of password or known information with your members of your family, and just in case something like this happens, they need to ask that information, and if the attacker doesn't know it, then it's a scam, even though they might be using your voice or your face in real-time video, right?
I think it's a key factor is for the people to understand how this new reality looks. Yeah, this advice of let's set up an audio, like a strange word that is only used by the family or the company, like a password that you are using to recognize if there is a fake or true conversation, is one of the advices I'm giving to the ones that are asking me that.
It's in the way multi-factor authentication, with the main authentication being what you see and what you hear, which is now no longer trustable, and you need a second authentication factor with that particular person or your team or your executives or your finance
or like it's like a human interaction method of checkup, like we use online. So like a strange word of who's my favorite singer or something like that. That is very intimate. But we come back to my obsession. Today, as we speak, the total revenue that the advertising platforms that are monetizing our division, our hate, our controversies, our debates online is more or less equal with 800,000 euros in Romania. Okay, this is the total revenue that they will cash in because of the ads that are there. The legit content, educational content, public interest content, content that people need, for example, for them to hear advices like that, are somewhere in between, I don't know, maybe 100,000 or less. So my point is that the bad actors and the bad way the media in general is set up now is against the public interest of educate people and make us aware of those dangers. So we at Ethical Media Alliance, we've run a study during 6 months, and the sad truth is the following: 3.5% out of the total content consumed in Romania was public interest content. More than 96% is shitty content, viral content, scams, and things like that. So it's a very, very serious situation there. In my humble opinion, we need, as societies, or responsible actors, to find ways to accelerate the general culture related with tech and how media works and how algorithmic media works and how algorithmic media is generating dependencies and so on and so forth. We saw yesterday or the day before a study from Romania that the young people are voting for two very somehow extreme doctrines. So one is a very conservative, one is very leftist, let's say. Why? Because people under the age of 25 in Romania, they are spending in algorithmic media, so scrolling, more than 7 hours per day. So they are not being exposed to real information or constructive information. They are just absorbed there. And this, I think, is a big challenge. How we make useful content great again. How we make useful content reach the audiences we need, for example, for our employees not to enter in those schemes, or not our companies being victims of those schemes, and so on. I received today a very good scam email from a fake ING account. So it's there, and it's very dangerous.
There's multiple actors here who could play a part in this, right? There's the government, like Romanian CERT, DNSC. They put out warnings all the time. There's the banks who put out warning to their consumers.
Social media is putting also warnings, but you know how it's like to say, like being Facebook or TikTok or Alphabet and putting ads. Be aware, there are a lot of fraudulent activities in our network. It's like, imagine, television will do that. Imagine like a very famous television station will say, look, in our news programs are also some fake news, and in our commercial breaks are ads from some scammers. But you know what? We don't know how to stop them. So good luck, defend yourself. How many downloads did you had with the guide you launched recently?
I don't have that number.
If you don't have 1 million downloads, it's not enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not enough. The cybersecurity has to be taught in the educational environment since the very young age, because we give kids constant devices to use with the internet, with the AI and stuff like that. So they have to learn how to do it, not learn by themselves. Okay, it's not perfect. The educational system in Romania right now focused on cybersecurity, especially before the university. But until then, we have to do something. We have to talk about it. We have to maybe start talking about it from the family, from our communities, from our group of friends. We all have specialists in IT&C or cybersecurity that can teach us how to develop this cybersecurity routine, these cybersecurity reflexes that we have to have online. And critical thinking also has to be in schools, media training and stuff like that. But until then,
during the pandemic, the top spenders of fake news were professors, especially from the primary schools in Romania. So the key is to educate the educators first, because they don't know about that, and they are the victims.
There is another issue. We have to make this subject sexy, because you can't address all of the population of Romania if they are not interested in the subject.
100% agree.
Maybe we can start with defining cybersecurity with a term that it's much more convenient to.
Or we could start learning from the others that have already successful programs. For example, Finland is embedding this kind of media literacy, digital literacy programs since kindergarten. So they have it embedded in their national curriculum. And first of all, of course, it wasn't easy at the beginning to create all these programs. It has been challenging, but now they are collecting the benefits, the results. It's a long-standing process, so it's not going to happen overnight. And one more piece of information that I'd like to bring into the debate is that according to the latest data and research, it appears that we're not only talking about a digital divide, so between the richest and the poorest parts of the world or of the country. You know, maybe the story of two Romanias, the tale of two Romanias, the rich Romania and the poor Romania. But it is also about a knowledge divide. I mean, those that are residing in the rural areas or in very poor areas are even more vulnerable to disinformation and deepfakes because they don't have any defense mechanism. So we need to think about all these aspects when we are going to design such a systemic strategy, embed it into the educational ecosystem. So it's not sufficient to have individual classes or trainings or debates. It is not. A systemic approach is needed, and experts in the digital field, in communication, in ethics, media ethics, I think it's an extremely important field, should contribute to this systemic approach.
Yeah, I also want to go back to a little bit your initial question related to, how do we protect if, for example, if you have a password with the family, if that is efficient? Because we were studying a lot the audio deepfakes, this accidents came to zero in the United States, and there were two interesting facts that went out of our research. The first one was that even if you had password, let's say, with your family, the scammers, they are very good at social engineering. Imagine that before they were doing this without your voice calling your parents. They would just call them or go to their house and say that, I don't know, you're in hospital and quickly they need some money to save your life for a blood transfusion or whatever. And they can bypass this very simple, because imagine that, let's say they're calling your password, they're calling your parents, and your mother asks for the password. They will just say that, mother, this is what you're thinking about now. I don't know. I don't remember the password. I just hit someone, quickly transfer the money because I'm going to prison. I don't remember that. We talk later. And imagine that you're in that situation. So most likely you're going to transfer the money, I guess, because you think that, your son is in a stressful situation and, they don't remember the password. And another interesting fact is that they are usually calling, of course, from another number. And they are bypassing this directly by saying that, I just hit someone, I'm calling you from their number because I need to send money on their Revolut. And then they put you in this kind of, stressful situation. So they're like two, let's say, defense mechanisms that they are bypassing quite easily just using social engineering. So,
Okay, that's. I wanted to refocus a little bit on some of the defenses because, and both on the consumer level, where we're talking about here, but also in the enterprise and businesses, because business email compromise, which is one type of fraud very common, that has led to billions of dollars being lost, where attackers are impersonating C-level executive, whether it's the CFO or the CEO. Or even contractor impersonation, like vendor impersonation, where you contact the finance department and you say, "Hey, I haven't received the payment for that particular. I changed the account. I'm a contractor, and we need that money ASAP. So please transfer it to this new account." And some of them do, which are now much easier to do if the attackers are also able to use the voice of the CEO or CFO or the contractor or even the image and the video and all that. And one defense for this was out-of-band verification, right? If you get an email from a spoofed email address or a hacked email address of the CEO, the recommendation used to be verify out-of-band. So, call the person and ask them, "Hey, did you really contacted me over email about this? I want to verify." Well, now what attackers are doing is they send the email and immediately they follow up with the phone call. And basically say, "Hey, I just sent you an email. I don't know if you've read it. I need you to do this." And in the victim's mind, it's kind of like the checkbox for out-of-band verification was just checked because you have two mediums, email and phone. What type of controls should we introduce here, both at the consumer level, which was the example with the password, but also I think. In terms of psychology, as you mentioned, the sense of urgency that this creates and puts pressure and people tend to cave under that pressure instead of stopping and taking a step back and being critical about it and say, okay, let me think about this. Is this something we should stress in our training to both consumers and employees take your time, even if it's something urgent, take your time to analyze the situation.
I think zero trust is the key. So zero trust emotional layer. Whatever looks very urgent, very important, do it now should be questionable.
Okay. what type? I wanted to ask Loredana because in terms of communication and, but also Mihai, if you want to answer from the communication standpoint and the psychological traits, what are some of the things that people could do to improve their responses or control their responses to this thing?
It is very easy for us to say to an individual, you won't be emotional in that situation, but he will be emotional. So try to stay calm, be vigilant, don't go into that emotive part of your personality. No, he will go. But having those reflexes, that will help. So yeah, you can start by you don't have to identify the technical specifications of that video to see if a video is fake or not. You have to think about what says in that video. And I go back to the investment scams. When you see the president of Romania or the prime minister that are pushing for some super easy to make money solutions online.
Warren Buffett just issued a warning this week because Berkshire Hathaway, which is an investment firm, issued a warning that there's multiple deepfakes on YouTube right now with Warren Buffett offering investment advice. And he's only the most successful investor ever, considered as a guru, so everyone would trust him.
In case of those investment scams that were propagated in Romania around 2023, 2024, they promised, I think, a profit of around 1,000%. So if you have basic economical education, you can understand that is not possible. Also, you can check that information if that offer is online on, I don't know, sources with a lot of reputation, like the mainstream media. But we have to train ourselves to do that, as I said, and we have to implement that in our cybersecurity routine, and they have to become reflexes. Because when we are emotional, we tend to be impulsive, and maybe we click on the link, maybe we provide information, but if we identify in the main scenario of that attack, for instance, first of all, impersonation, second of all, urgency, third of all, emotion, and the last thing, asking for a certain action, such as providing data or making payment, then some triggers have to be activated. So this has to be a reflex, and we have to constantly talk about that and have awareness raising campaigns, guides, I don't know, whatever you can do to provide that information to the general public, because there is no one to educate us in this moment about how technology is evolving and how fast it can go and it can target you.
Right. But we do have sorry, please go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that I think it's important to have here a twofold approach. I mean, first of all, of course, this reactive approach, in order to pay back all those attackers that want to influence and also to generate these negative effects. On the other hand, it's also important to have a preventive, a more proactive approach. And it's not sufficient to implement trainings in our companies, in our organizations. I've been there. I mean, I've been part of this kind of programs because till the end of the day, we are all part of the same society. So it's going to hit us back, the fact that we are not going to take care of the critical mass of the society that basically falls for these fake narratives, polluted narratives that are going to ruin the balance between the good and the bad, so to say. So it's extremely important to think about all these measures in a whole of a society approach. This is a concept that has also been used in Finland, but also in other northern countries such as Sweden, Estonia, and it's obvious that they have this permanent threat coming from the east. Winter is coming, but we also have it, so it's not that we are immune. We've seen what happened in the past elections, and I think it's important to learn from the best, to learn from those that have paved the way for this kind of measures, which again are not easy to implement. Not at all. They require money, they require a lot of attention, they require collaboration between different sectors. So the digital people or the technical people or the communication people cannot do it independently, but we need to start from somewhere.
Right. I think, we have those messages on TV, that have to do with against alcohol, the alcohol consumption or violence in the family that are sponsored by the state, by the government, and, TV stations run them as ads, I guess, which we could include that for cybersecurity or things like that. But as you mentioned, in countries like Finland, where they start really young, and that's very important because another aspect of these deepfakes is their use against minors. And when you're talking about minors, we cannot talk about, training them as an adult would do to control their emotions, to be critical and things like that, right? And we have cases where generative AI is being used to produce sexual content of sexual nature involving minors. There have been arrests already. Makes it much more easier for this content to be generated and spread. And also cyberbullying in schools, where, and particularly female students are being targeted, where you can now generate, intimate photos of them with their face and then cyberbully them. And that takes this already existing issue of cyberbullying in schools to a whole different level. So that's why I think this training needs to start at a much younger age, right? Would you agree with that? And in terms of, what do you see as because we don't have much time, so I want to leave some time for Q&A from the room. What do you see, because you're talking earlier about the ad space and the social networks and all that, is it government regulation that we're expecting here to come and say, hey, you either have to run these, preventive ads where we're trying to train the population, or, fines and things for running, scams and things like that, force them to do better detection, even though as you said, they have argued that they're detecting these scams and fraudulent ads and are taking them down, and it's not enough, even with the old type of scams. Now, when you add deepfakes into it, it's questionable to what extent they can even detect the deepfakes, right?
Kidding a bit, one of the warnings that the TV station can run is something like "Don't be stupid," but just like a joke. It's not a joke though, because one of the campaigns we saw in Romania targeted intellectually vulnerable people, let's say, with ads selling a fantastical product that doesn't exist and so on and so forth. And we saw in the electoral campaign that after that, the ads were used to manipulate the vote, for example. So they had, if you believe that the tea can save you from cancer, most probably you will believe also that Russia wants the good for Romania. Coming back to your question, again, ethics are crucial, but as far as ethics are not somehow imposed to some companies, they will not follow that. We saw in the United States, especially Meta platforms, they instructed their developers to create hooks for young people and very young people to stay online. We see that now AI models are encouraging somehow to create sexual explicit content, because this is also a hook that is good for shareholders and to show growth and so on and so forth. So we need to have an honest discussion about, okay, not everything that is efficient is also good for our societies, and companies that wants to operate in this space should also take some ethical responsibility, and especially with kids, this is outrageous. So we don't have to allow that as society, but the regulation is not as efficient. I think what is efficient is public pressure, because if the public pressure is there, then the platforms will comply.
You wanted to say something, Mihai, I think?
No, I fully agree. I mean, it's about ethics, first of all, and I don't think that regulation would solve the problem. I mean, cyber criminals, they don't have the objective of respecting the law, first of all. So this would impact businesses in general, not cyber criminals. Yeah, but there is also the UI/AI Act, which would be enforced in 2027, I think, which would impose to those manufacturers of such content, for instance, to clearly brand the content as being generated by AI. So it's a step forward. But as we saw, the cyber criminals always find ways to circumvent legislation, well, not legislation, but circumvent the our shields, for instance.
Well, I mean, if it's an open source model that you can download from Hugging Face and
exactly.
It's jailbroken, there's no regulation applies to it.
And yeah, regarding ethics, I saw recently a video, I think, of the Threat Intel team from Claude that explained some of the interesting cases how cyber criminals use Claude, and Claude was actually at the driving seat for cyber criminals, for phishing attempts and stuff like that. So it would be very interesting, and it's a chess game, a continuous chess game between attackers and defenders, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry. If there are questions in the room.
Sure, I have very quickly two ones, one for Mihai and one for George. I understand you don't believe regulations are the solution, but we already touched that for Meta, 10% of the revenue represents fraudulent ads. If regulation is not the solution, maybe fines could be another one for damage that they've created. And the second one is for George, kind of following Dragos' example of the phishing email he got impersonating ING. Where does the responsibility of vendors like yourself start in their demark journey and just fighting against accounts that are spoofing your brand? May that be from a social responsibility perspective or purely for protecting your brand awareness, your brand reputation?
Yeah, my answer will be short. So regulation is necessary, but wouldn't solve all the problems. So aside from regulation, we have to have education, we have to have critical thinking, media training in schools and stuff like that. So we have to start doing that. We're always talking about it, but we are not doing it.
And I was saying, maybe fines are an alternative for damage that already has been done? Fines. Maybe fines.
Fines, I understood fines. I don't know. Yeah, it's a solution for those who are responsible for propagating that content, surely.
Okay, and coming back to your question regarding the spoofing, yeah, you can imagine that there are many scammers that are impersonating also, yeah, via phone calls, possible ING employees, and also via email. If we're talking about emails, yeah, the best thing that we can do there is awareness. So we are having, of course, multiple campaigns and multiple warnings regarding this kind of phishing emails. And in many cases, if they're like similar domains, then we are reporting that and trying to get them down as fast as possible. Unfortunately, yeah, we cannot limit or influence the emails that people are receiving. So yeah, it's more, all the actions that we're doing are mostly on the awareness side. And yeah, when it comes to the phone, we already have some active measures in place, so we can check, at least in Belgium, you can check if, for example, the bank is calling you. You can check in the app if it's actually the bank that is calling you. So this kind of improvements that we're doing all the time, and as you said, it's kind of a cat and mouse game. When scammers are trying something, that we're trying, of course, to counter it or to forecast it in advance if we're talking about new technologies. Yeah.
Sort of following up on that, I was wondering if you guys are aware of any sort of protocol level challenge and response based, besides having personal passwords with everybody that you ever have to do with, sort of more at a higher level, at a systems level. If you're aware of any protocols to sort of automate those types of challenge and responses. And also for ING, I imagine you guys are also concerned about the defeat of like video ident protocols and KYC protocols based on generative AI and deepfakes combined. So I'd be interested in sort of the approaches there.
Yeah, so if we're talking about onboarding like IDMV, there we are working with different partners. So, and the way that they are approaching, the rise of new technologies and, more and more better deepfakes that impersonate various people that, will be onboarded in the banking system. So they are, working on these kind of improvements every day. And so we didn't see actually cases where let's say the IDMV was broken on that. So, but of course, I'm talking about Belgium, so I'm not sure in other countries if this is the case. But normally they are quite proactive, so this is kind of their business model that they need to be a bit step ahead. And your first question regarding the protocol, that one I didn't.
Just if there exists any kind of protocols that would allow a person who is under attack to technically have any kind of verification possibility for who it is that I'm talking to. I imagine something where you have an ability to provide a challenge and response between the attacker and the attackee, and if the challenge and response fails, then you wouldn't trust the person wearing your boss's fake.
So if we're talking about people that are victims of fraud, then we have some special teams that are managing the relationship with the customer, and also in some cases they might ask, for example, for an extra video verification, or they will ask certain questions that probably the scammers will not have, so they have kind of a full set of procedures. And if we're talking about the fraud itself, then we have quite complex system behind that is detecting various patterns on fraudulent transactions. And we're trying to improve that all the time. But of course, scammers are quite smart as well. So it's a bit coming back to the cat and mouse game.
I wanted to add here from my knowledge as covering attacks and that sort of things. You can have, I guess, software-defined controls. But that's only if there's a process in place. Many of these scams try to sidestep the typical process. So it's like a sense of urgency. We need to close this transaction now. Please transfer the money. This is an important deal, things like that, messages like that. In that case, you could have at the policy level, for example, for your finance department or accounting department, any transfer needs to be authorized by two separate individuals. So, dual authorization. So in that case, if one of them gets targeted, they still need to run it by a second person in order to authorize that transfer. So it's not a single person in the loop, it's two people in the loop. You can implement stuff like that, but it's at the kind of like the internal policy level. It's not necessarily enforced. One other type of deepfake scam, I guess, that is now gaining traction is the fake employee. And this is particularly North Korea has been doing this, where the North Korean government sends people to get hired as remote tech employees into American companies and other companies around the world. And the way they do that, they either stole an identity, so they claim they're based in the US, they're a US citizen, they use, fake IDs, they go through the interview process, and then they get onboarded, they receive a laptop. This creates also, like supply chain risks. They can, if it's a technology company, they can introduce potentially a backdoor and all that, which North Korea is also very interested in and has historically done all sorts of software supply chain attacks. But also simply to gather money, because North Korean government is under sanctions. They need to gather money any possible way, including through employment, because tech workers are being paid very well. And now CrowdStrike put out a report a few months ago, where they saw over 200 cases of this like fake employment into American tech companies by North Koreans specifically, and some of them were using deepfakes and Gen AI to hide their identity and pass interviews, because one way is to basically, okay, let's do a video interview. You want to do a video interview with the potential applicant, and deepfake allows you to pass those interviews basically. So it's these controls need to be at different, it really depends on the process, whether it's the recruitment process, whether it's the transfer, the financial transfer process, paying vendors, paying employees, things like that. Any other questions? There, I think there was also someone there if they didn't leave earlier. No? Okay, let's go there.
I have a question for Mr. Mihai. I would like to know where can I report a deepfake and which are the concrete measures that the state will take to protect me? Thank you.
Well, first of all, it depends on where you encounter that deepfake. If you encounter it on social media, you can report it to social media, but let's be honest, you won't have any success with it. You can report it to the National Cybersecurity Directorate, but I have to tell you that we don't analyze content. So it has to have a component of cybersecurity to it in order for us to report it on our special law enforcement channel to social media. But we will have to have a look at it first, and then we can report it. So count on us. If it's not our job, we would forward it to the authority whose job is it to report it further.
Let me add something here. 0.016% out of the total revenue of big tech in the world is generated in Romania. 0.016. 2 years ago, the Ministry of Digitalization tried to launch this platform for the people to report fake news and misinformation and scams and so on and so forth, and people reported, like thousands of people. The problem is that all the platforms, with one exception, just ignored everything, even if there were a protocol between the Ministry of Digitalization, Meta, Alphabet, and Biden. So as far as we don't have good faith in the originators of the problem, we can do thousands discussions like that. They are not useful. But they are useful to educate people. So regarding regulation, I think we don't need any more regulation in European Union if we still want any tech startup to start here. What we need is smart regulation. For example, instead of punishing or doing fines to those platforms, to find ways the money to be invested in media literacy, in education, in enabling our teachers to understand what's going on, and so on and so forth. Because otherwise, it's useless. Or put a fine to the platforms. Because we had other examples in other industries. Tobacco is paying an additional tax for paying hospitals. Sugar-based food, they are paying something because they are exploiting a human vulnerability for profit. So why not asking us or the platforms to pay for our education, because they are profiting, they are grabbing profit by exploiting our lack of knowledge, not to say stupidity.
It is important, nevertheless, to report the problem, because, as you may know, there's the Digital Services Act. In each and every EU country, there's a coordinator of the digital services that can report things that are social media is not doing properly, such as eliminating illegal content from their platforms in due time. So they can issue a report to the European Commission, who can surely fine them with big sums of money.
Yeah, we have laws. Digital Services Act is being ignored because the United States ordered to the US embassies all over the world to not comply to Digital Services Act. So, end of story.
Other question?
Yeah.
Please. Just press the button.
There. Okay, there and there, then there.
Okay, I have a follow-up question for the first one. Yeah, and I do agree that we should do more because social engineering is nothing new. I mean, it's pretty old. And we always discuss about recommendations and we should do that and we should do this. So yeah, my question is, who is the responsible body that should implement all these recommendations and, I don't know, regulations? And what are the hiccups in the process? Because, as I mentioned, social engineering is nothing new. I mean, it's pretty old.
I will try and answer here because I've seen that they have, I mean, the presidency has published the national security strategy where you saw maybe that deepfakes and disinformation is framed as a top problem, a top priority. I also have a dilemma from this perspective, what you mentioned, the way it is implemented and overseen, monitored, the implementation of DSA and all the other linked regulations. And I believe that from this perspective, I mean, reinforcing and monitoring the way it is being implemented, we still need to do something. I mean, in terms of institutional mandates, something should change. They should be updated, maybe a new body should appear that would be able to take care of these aspects, or the existing institutions who already have the know-how, the knowledge, the history, the background, everything, should be included into this monitoring flow and implementation flow, because otherwise it's only dust in the wind. It's only words. DSA, it's only words right now in most of the situations. We need to expand the mandates in order to be able to monitor what happens.
Had a question there?
Hi, thank you so much. Very interesting panel. Thank you, Dragos Stanca, for the very direct replies. I am a professor at the University of Bucharest. We're researching deepfakes there. For some of the issues you raised, I think some of them are already solved. So it was a very good point made that we have answers. We know Meta is ignoring everything. So we cannot do anything about that, I guess. But let's take banking, for example. I'm old enough to remember when buying anything from using a bank was blocking my amount for a week or two. Why are we allowing transfers to shady fintech companies without blocking the amount? That doesn't need any deepfake protection. It's just if you call my mother with a deepfake audio, okay, she will transfer the money, but why are you allowing the transfer to go right away? I think that's also a marketing strategy so that you have instant payments or whatever. I don't care about the actual marketing reason, but I'm just saying you have the tool for that. You used it in the past, it's there. And for sabotage inside your companies, there's something that's called photo response non-uniformity, that every camera on your phone or everything, microphone and so on has it, even though it's called photo. And we use it to detect deepfake. Because my camera is different than your camera on my phone. My microphone is different. It has some small technical defects. And if I enroll somebody in my company, I give him a phone, I give him some technical equipment, I can identify him based on that. So we have solutions for that, mature solutions. So we can do that. Of course, it's not perfect. It's not a general example, but it's closed inside the company. So you cannot fake your boss anymore if you recognize the phone when it's calling, or videos or whatever. So that's so the big issue remains, right? The media, and I think the media, and maybe Dragos can tell us. I think we were set up for this. Do you remember all the titles? They're even present now. With "You won't believe what this football player did." I mean, this is the next step, right? The deep fake is just answering and continuing that direction. Journalism failed us as a society for decades now. I mean, not me and you here, but like, you know, vulnerable people. So this is just the next logical step if you're in that business. So I don't think that deepfake per se is a problem, but I don't know. Us as a society and how we're triggered is the problem. And yes, education and all that, but I agree it's just words for now. So,
regarding your remark, yeah, I'm 100% with you, but this is not journalism. These are the scammers of our journalistic space. I just mentioned at the beginning that 3.5 out of the total content that's being consumed in Romania is journalistic-based content. That's why we've created Ethical Media Alliance. ethicalmediaalliance.eu, for example, if you want more details, where we are tackling this problem because bad actors took over and they are selling this idea that freedom of speech is very important and blah, 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 but it's a freedom of doing scams and spreading fake news. It's the business model. So, as I've mentioned, because I don't want to take any of the time of everybody, the business model of Web 2.0 is the main issue. So the journalists that are still there, they are still fighting. Their voices are less and less visible because of this setup. The whole business setup is against qualitative content. And click here to see what's there. It's one small technique. Now it's emotional bait, hate bait. For example, in TikTok, you need to do clickbait on video. We have television stations that are doing viewership clickbait using yellow breaking news all the day and so forth. And yeah, it's a very, 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 very important societal problem, and we see all over the world why the bad impact of this is seeing democracies are dying, societies are being collapsed. We are fighting all the time, and nobody's having any clear voice, and so on and so forth. And yes, that's why we are losing money now with Ethical Media Alliance, because we want to raise our voices and make this as visible as possible, because it's a huge problem for everybody. And if you ask me why banks are allowing those transfers, I don't know. I hope they will not anymore, because yeah, the banking system in general, they can see payments, who's paying for what virtual cards are being produced, and yeah, we need to put public pressures on everybody, because not only profit is what matters.
Right, and thank you for adding that insight to the conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to go through all the examples of deepfakes that are out there. There are technical solutions, as you mentioned. There's always that balance between basically usability and security. You can make very secure systems. It's just they're not going to be very friendly to use. And they are going to impact productivity. And from a business sense, increasing productivity is basically the goal, right? That's why all companies are chasing AI automations right now to increase productivity. So there will probably be some developments of how to detect these things, but we have to keep in mind that some of these scams that we were talking about, the business email compromise scam, the rogue employment attacks, this existed before the deepfakes as well, and they worked as well. It's now that, and since those lesser versions of these scams worked, the concern is now that deepfakes only makes them even harder to detect. And most defenses that companies do against social engineering is employee training, right? And if this bypass the existing employee training recommendations, you need to change the training and include some new things, right? So that was kind of the point or the discussion. What are some of those new things that we can add to the employee training to, catch this new type of threats, or evolved? Let's name them that, evolved threats. Any other questions? Sorry.
I guess not.
No.
Thank you, Lucian, for this exceptional panel, and to our distinguished speakers for addressing straightforward, sensitive topics without using office politics. I'm speechless. Thank you. And also thank you to our amazing public who raised interesting topics for debate. Because I didn't succeed in the morning, please allow me just 2 minutes to express our gratitude also to our partners and sponsors. Starting with Orange Business, whose long-standing support has been essential to DefCamp's evolution. DefCamp is proudly organized by the Cybersecurity Research Center from Romania. A big thank you to MasterCard for joining this year's edition, helping us elevate the DefCamp experience year after year. We are equally grateful to Adobe, Sophos, and BitSentinel for standing by us and contributing to this remarkable edition. Thank you, Booking Holdings, Bitdefender, Pentest Tools, Siemens, CyberEdu, Superbet, and Data Core Systems for all your support and involvement. And of course, our heartfelt appreciation goes out to our broader community and all the partners who helped bring the 15th edition of DefCamp to life. Thank you for showing up with passion and enthusiasm. DefCamp thrives because of you, its incredible community. Please, with this amazing panel, we close up the track 4. We still have the ceremony in the evening at 5:15. Till then, we kindly invite you to our other panels in track 1, 2, and 3. And one more time, big thank you for this exceptional panel and for addressing these topics.